Good morning, everybody.
Morning, Jam.
Morning.
Morning.
Hello, everyone, and a warm welcome to today's Quarterly Economic Survey webinar delivered by the Free South Yorkshire Chambers of Commerce and kindly sponsored by our strategic partners, the South Yorkshire Mayoral Combined Authority. If we've not met before, my name's Dan Fell. I'm the Chief Executive of Doncaster Chamber of Commerce, and I'll be guiding us through this session. A few digital bits of housekeeping just to kick us off. We've got 1 hour in the director's session, and we'll try and make sure we've got a hard stop at 12:30. So when clearly has got meetings and onward commitments to get to. We do record this session because we like to make it available to our sort of partners on our website thereafter. So if you've told your boss you're meant to be somewhere else, you might want to nip your camera off, but otherwise please do keep it on and take part in that conversation. It's great to see kind of faces and to help with that engagement. And then as the session kind of unfolds, do feel free to sort of raise your digital hand with a question and or to pop kind of comments in the chat box, and we'll try and bring everyone into the discussion as much as we possibly can do. Before we sort of get into the meat of this, a quick explainer of why we're all here and what this is all about. So if you've not come across it before, the Quarterly Economic Survey is a really long-running survey conducted by the UK Chamber Network. It's been going for 20 plus years. And that means we've got access to loads of really helpful longitudinal information and kind of trend analysis. The way we present those results, typically the questions are asked in the format of, has something got better the last 3 months? Has it got worse the last 3 months? And what we try and do is pull out the balance of those results. So we've got that kind of trend line over time that says broadly are things going upwards or downwards in terms of their trajectory. In addition to the questions we ask in common with our chamber colleagues across the UK, our partnership with the Mayoral Combined Authority and its Business Advisory Board lets us build in quarterly hot topics that we think are of particular relevance and interest to South Yorkshire at a point in time. And this last quarter, we've been poking away at the opportunities created by an uplift in government spend on defence and sort of South Yorkshire's interest in that sector. But in the past, been able to ask things about AI take-up, about town and city centres, access to finance, and a range of other things that kind of help inform the decisions we're making here in the region. Finally, in terms of the webinar format itself, this is primarily, but not at all exclusively, aimed at our partners in the public sector, at sort of politicians and people in their offices, and also members of the various advisory boards that sit around organisations like councils, the Mayoral Combined Authority, etc. But it's to be as useful to you guys as we possibly can be in the Chamber Network by kind of feeding you that kind of hot off the coal face sort of business sentiment that our members and a broader community of interest are experiencing at a point in time. I'll pass over to my colleague, Sian Booth, who is Doncaster Chamber's Head of Policy and Partnerships in a second. She's going to take us through the data and the recent results. Slight spoiler alert, they are pretty grim in terms of that readout. I suppose the other kind of housekeeping thing is if you're in a low mood, you might want to look away now, because it's a bit of a reality check for our economy at the moment. And then from Sian, I will then also bring in 2 of the guest speakers that we have today. And classically, we sort of bring in a couple of people from the real economy, SMEs in the region, to bring their stories and the data to life for us. So thrilled to welcome Guy Kramer, who's the Managing Director of Cyber Intelligence and Advisory Limited. Hi, Guy, warm welcome to you. And also to Megan Roberts, who's the Social Value Manager at Esh Group. So as we've heard from Sian, Guy, and sort of Megan with their kind of first thoughts, we'll then open out into a Q&A session, and then we will bring this to a close just before 12:30 with a few thoughts on how this plugs into the region's work, and particularly some reflections if they hear from Louisa and Tarek, who co-chair the South Yorkshire Business Advisory Board at the request of Mayor Coppard. So that's enough from me. Hopefully that's the meeting that you guys all thought you were in. Hope you enjoy it. Thank you for making the time to attend. I'll now pass over to Sean, who's going to take us through the last quarter's economic survey results. Sean, over to you.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, I hope you're all sat down. So we obviously, on behalf of all three chambers, I'm presenting today's results, and I just want to thank any businesses on the call who filled in the quarterly economic survey. I know particularly in the current conditions, even 15 minutes out of your work is a big ask. So thank you very much. So it's an even spread, broadly speaking, and roughly speaking, representative of the sectors that we have in chamber membership as well. So let's get into it. I think it's fair for us to discuss today's results, considering that the field work was taking place under the cloud of the Chancellor's budget, and therefore the kind of ongoing uncertainty around that does really play out in what we're about to see. I mean, I'd like to say that we're in a more certain period this kind of in the beginning of the new year, but obviously we've had all this uncertainty around tariffs as well, which will do no favors for the export figures that we're about to look at. But you know, consistently, all the businesses that have fed back to us as part of this have cited the budget and corporate taxation as concerns. So kind of first slide looks at this kind of domestic market and sales over the last 3 months, which you can see is not only down 15%, that kind of, oh, let me get my little, can you see me pen? Yeah, awesome. Yeah, the kind of really depressing downward spiral there, but it actually shows that UK sales went into net negative for the first time in 3 years. So as Dan was saying, these are probably some of the most depressing figures that we've seen, notwithstanding you know, the global financial crisis and the pandemic. So it's really saying something. In terms of overseas markets, it's not actually the worst that we've seen it, because obviously if you look back a few quarters, this was Liberation Day with the big beautiful chart, and you know, things have been worse, but it's almost as bad. And obviously I'm kind of expecting this to only get worse given the kind of external conditions that exporters are operating under at the moment. And if actually you want a little bit more guidance about that, the British Chambers yesterday put out a really helpful kind of one-side explainer as to what to expect. In terms of labour force, it shows for the second quarter in a row this increase in temporary contracts as opposed to permanent ones, which indicate this kind of wider uncertainty and nervousness amongst recruiters. And then in spite of that, actually, more businesses are saying it's still difficult to recruit, and more difficult to recruit than I think it's in the last year and a half. So again, all heading in the wrong direction. Cash flow, this is one of those indicators that we look at because it's that kind of wider determinant of business health. And again, it is in negative results and a significant low dip, even considering, you know, this was the Chancellor's, what was this one? Oh, this was Liberation Day, the whole thing around tariffs and taxes. So even considering that, it is still really low and a sobering point. Moving on to price and costs, again, all indicators heading in the wrong direction, particularly from labour costs being the major concern. And like in some of the narrative feedback that came through, quite a lot of businesses citing the Employment Rights Act as an area of concern and a resistance to recruiting, but also just how it's driving prices up. And just as in the last time we presented the results, the biggest concern for businesses are around interest rates, inflation, and corporate taxation, which won't surprise anybody, obviously, given the fieldwork period that we're in. So I think, kind of given all that, it's easy to feel really, you know, like there's not many reasons to be cheerful. But what's quite helpful about this quarter's hot topics is that the kind of public sector supply chain opportunities in South Yorkshire are vast, and I think there's a real opportunity here for our local business owners, particularly our smaller businesses, to be able to increase their confidence, and also our public sector partners to really invest in their local businesses, and that extends to new opportunities that are coming to the region, like through the defence deal. So kind of just wanted to touch on that briefly before we hear from our speakers. I mean, the kind of general vibes from a lot of the businesses that took part in this, and probably, you know, only a third of businesses felt as though they could really participate in this part of the survey, because either it's not an area they're working, it doesn't appear to be relevant for them. But those that did participate have, you know, really acknowledge the opportunity around innovation. This is a high growth sector. You know, the public sector really, you know, dominates our labour market locally, and there has been a number of initiatives, particularly out of, like, you know, in Sheffield, for example, about that transparency about public sector procurement and the progress that's been made there. So, I mean, to the surprise of nobody, the bureaucracy of public sector procurement comes up as the major barriers. And I think, you know, anybody that's gone through that process will know that public sector tendering is a pain. And I think it's easier for some of the slightly bigger companies that might have departments that are solely dedicated to that, or are able to afford consultants to support them. But not only is it not in the language of business, most businesses just don't even know where to start, and that's where the turnoff is. And particularly, you know, if we reflect on these economic conditions under which businesses are working in, there's kind of no surprise in that. I mean, we'll get onto social value in a little bit, but I think, you know, most businesses are probably operating in a way that demonstrates brilliant social value. You know, you only have to look at our respective business awards across the chamber network to know that we've got some really big-hearted businesses that do inclusive recruiting, that invest in their communities. I think some of that is about how businesses are able to explain that and see it as part of their kind of contracting process, above the kind of, like, you know, day job of being a decent business that is in a community. Most businesses said that they didn't know what the defence growth deal was, didn't know how it would be beneficial for their businesses either. And the vast majority of businesses said that they weren't operating in defence related sectors, but actually when I looked into that, loads of them were, but just didn't self-identify as that. So, like, particularly in areas like facilities management or IT, they just didn't see themselves as being able to you know, be part of that sector. Yeah, and this kind of repeats what we saw on the kind of public sector supply chain, most businesses being put off by the kind of bureaucracy of it all, but also some of the kind of validations that they have to go through in terms of their own security measures. But I think the visibility of opportunities has also come out from survey respondents, not really know where to start, not having a point of contact that they can go to, it not being in the language that's interpretable for them. That being said, most businesses said that they would be interested in hearing more and collaborating with local universities, colleges, research centres to develop their defence related capabilities and be able to develop their skills and confidence in that area, which I think is really interesting if we think about, you know, South Yorkshire potentially being an area of a defence technical excellence college, what that might look like. You know, there's well over 100, nearly 200 businesses that have said that they want to partner with our learning institutions about that. But yeah, overall, I think most businesses said that they would benefit from greater awareness in defence and greater collaboration and partnerships, whether that's done through, you know, the chamber network or otherwise, to understand how they might, yeah, benefit from the growth in this area. So with that, I'll just stop sharing my screen for a little bit, just so that you're not looking at a blank slide, and we can get into the Q&A.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Sean. Really sort of comprehensive and authoritative as always. So appreciate you sharing the insight. Guy, can I kind of swing over to you first, if that's okay? Softball question in the first instance. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your organization, and sort of how it relates to the sort of topics we're talking about today, if that's okay?
Yeah, certainly. Thanks very much, Dan. So yeah, my name's Guy Kramer. I'm the founder and managing director of a company called Cyber Intelligence and Advisory Limited. So my background is for 2 decades working in the defence and commercial area, building security operations facilities. So Thales in Doncaster originally, through to Rolls-Royce over in Derby, and then for my sins joined some of the large Big Four consulting companies and large vendors, and then built and managed operations through from Taiwan to the Middle East to North America, etc. So personally, I'm sitting on the steering committee for the Yorkshire Cyber Security Cluster. So keen on bringing those skills and building up those skills locally, as well as being a cyber ambassador for the National Cyber Security Centre for the UK. So a little bit about CII UK. So I started the business just over 12 months ago. Again, Doncaster based. The majority of my client base is actually delivering contracts for military defence area. Also on the commercial side, some within the legal and software service provider areas. Basically, we specialise in strategic security solutions and also tactical and strategic business needs as customers come across them, and deliver outcomes of value. So an example of that is where some companies have, or at least one company has come to me and said, you know, we're a defence contractor in another European country and we want to enter the UK market. Help us set up to be able to engage with UK mod to sell into them. So and also from other areas, you know, customers who aren't currently in the defence industry but do want to transition into that. So that's some areas that we've been helping, which align with what we're talking about this morning.
Perfect. Thank you, Guy. And Megan, can I bring you in, if that's okay, just to sort of introduce yourself and a little bit of that Esh Group, if that's okay?
Absolutely. I do apologise, my connection keeps dropping off just being on a live site. So if I do turn my camera off, it's just to save connection. So I'm Megan Roberts. I'm the Social Value Manager at Esh Group, formerly known as Esh Construction, and certainly around South Yorkshire, you might recognise Esh Civils, Esh Living or Esh Construction signage. So I've been with the company now for just over 4 years, and my role covers the entire region, Yorkshire and the Humber, and everything to do with social value, be that the 140 some TOMs through the government. We actually operate about 38 of those day in, day out. So delivering social value that is high quality and driven really by the communities that we're working in. We aren't a contractor who wants to deliver our own programs for our own benefit. We're a contractor that wants to hear the voices of the communities that we're working in and work to their mutual benefit. A lot of what we do is particularly around employment and skills, so ensuring that we are employing locally and responsibly, working with job centres and various other programmes. We've got a programme called Constructing Careers that's a 3-week course that gets those that are furthest from the labour market into construction roles that are starting levels, so your main certifications like CSCS cards, etc., and getting you onto site and getting that vital experience. Because what we're seeing is a lot of students going through the funnel of universities, and unfortunately the opportunities aren't there. Whereas if you do go through some of the other pathways that we are offering, we're in that space now where we can nurture the talent and bring people in at different levels so that they can then grow within our own industry, if not with ourselves. So that's kind of a brief summary. In terms of our social value strategy, we've been doing this for 15 years now. We were kind of one of the first contractors to see the benefit of social value before it got the name. So really trying to look at how we can expand on that now and diversify and work with our supply chain, mainly to show them what social value means and bring them along on the journey with us. We are multi-award winning for our social value delivery, which is something that we're really proud of and hopefully continue.
And congratulations on your recent award by the Barnes and Rotherham Chamber as well, Megan. And we can perhaps kind of get into a little bit of that and why you won in a second as the kind of conversation evolved.
Yeah.
But if I can kind of keep us sort of just focused on some of that macro stuff in the first instance, perhaps again coming to you first, Guy, but I do promise you both, for the sake of variety, I will swap that around as we kind of go. But so the Guy, your reflections on the data presented to Sean, does it chime with your own experiences, or do you perhaps feel like an outlier in some areas? Like, how is business for you, and what are your thoughts on the worldview that kind of Sean gave us?
I mean, from my perspective, being a consultancy and advisory practice, and not having as many, the operating costs are considerably lower. So from that perspective, I'm in a lucky position. But the majority of my clients are 100% feeling the pinch in the data that you're showing. So it considerably aligns along with that. I mean, one of the other things that I would say, some of the clients that I'm working with, is that I am seeing a real growth in terms of companies who are diversifying, who wouldn't consider themselves to be in the defence industry, who are actually looking to get into that area because of the way things are with the world at the moment, and the investment that should be coming that way. Well, I know we've had this strategic defence review, which sort of signals what might be coming through, but we've not had the actual money flowing through yet from government. So there are quite a few things poised, but the national trade body for the defence industry in the UK is seeing at least a 200% increase in the number of businesses of all sizes, including SMEs, trying to get into that area.
Yeah, and like, forgive me because I'm a bit of a layman when it comes to the defence sector, but other industries that I know a little bit better, for example, rail, it feels like they're often very sort of spiky when kind of the money is coming through from sort of government-led initiatives, and that sort of leads to opportunity for sort of SME business, but it can lead to kind of cliff edges too. What are your expectations about sort of that increase in sort of defence spend when it kind of flushes through? You think that's going to be sustained and continuous, and therefore like a safe sort of sector for businesses to pivot into, or would you expect kind of similar spikiness to what we see in sort of rail as an example?
I think that when the funding becomes available, it's going to be a really sharp rise in the amount of work that's coming through, which means that you need to be prepared and have the people ready to be able to support that that new generated requirements, etc., for services. The thing as well that I would also say is that it's not only necessarily UK mod. Once you're in that area, also means that you can sell to other sort of NATO members as well. So when you're thinking about future horizons, etc., you're not only thinking about what defence spend would be in the UK, but potentially in other European countries, maybe that are closer to nation states, that or other actors that you may want to have protect against. So I think that actually once you're in that area, actually it's easier to maintain that and continue with it. I'm not sure about the cost of sale. If you are trying to sell more across to maybe Bulgaria and other areas which are maybe closer to Russia or the Middle East. But yeah, I think that there would be sustained business over there.
Yeah, and it's a really interesting observation, that, isn't it? I think for sort of particularly our sort of public sector friends and partners on this call, a perennial thing that we wrestle with here in South Yorkshire is getting our business base to sort of export more, to internationalize, and actually defence is a really great route to do that through. And that's definitely for me kind of one of those kind of initial takeaways from this discussion. Megan, can I bring you in and perhaps kind of pivoting a little to the social value aspect of this? You deliver so much into communities. It'd be great to hear your thoughts on sort of why you think you've won so many awards in this space, and you're clearly achieving, business growth through social value too. Can you just sort of, get to the next level of detail about what you're doing in this space, and then perhaps share your thoughts on if this is always framed in the right way in terms of something governments of every kind of shape or stripe is like compelling businesses to do, or should this be promoted much more as like a way of achieving success? Okay, I think we may have just temporarily lost Megan, which is going to be fun. Well, Guy, let's
Apologies.
no, you're back, Megan, and did you hear the question?
Yes, I did. I got the majority
Perfect.
of it. Just at the end there, just dropped off. Really bad timing for the
worries.
piling works. So for us, it's really about who we are. What we do is construction, but who we are is our social value delivery, and that's something that we are really proud of. In terms of how we deliver on that, we've diversified a lot of the programs that we deliver, and changed how we look at social value as time's gone on. So things like your apprenticeships. So we are a management contractor, so working with a lot of supply chain. So with that, we actually employ a lot of apprenticeships through our subcontractors themselves. So looking at things like work experience, if we're taking on work experience students, where is the benefit and the long-term goal? So we'll speak to our supply chain members before we get to that point, and try and bring them on beforehand. So we really are trying to think about how we can engage the SMEs within our supply chain to Hello.
Hello, you're back, Megan. Keep going. Okay. Let's just see if Megan can kind of improve her connection a little bit. And Guy, if it's okay, I'll kind of come back to you. Is someone sort of guiding sort of lots of businesses, in this space and into kind of, MOD and other sort of public sector kind of opportunities? Like, what's your sort of view on the proportionality of a kind of social value ask? Does it feel pitched about right for the times you're in? Does it feel like we could be, if you like, extracting more from businesses, or are we pushing too hard on this in the current climate?
Dan. So I think there's I think there's been for a number of years, people have heard about sort of the Armed Forces Covenant to be able to, for people who are ex-serving, to be able to bring them into businesses, to that they have, future work and prospects, etc. Which I've actually we've signed that as part on behalf of the business to encourage, supporting the people who've served our country. But actually, that is also an opportunity for businesses who are looking for people who are already security cleared. So actually, that is a way to, from a business perspective, to reduce the amount of time it takes to, obviously, when you normally onboard somebody, it might take 3 to 6 months for them to get the clearance. Whereas actually, if they've already got it, it can be transferred over. You're getting better utilization out of that resource, and actually they feel more useful because they can get hands on again and start working on the stuff quite quickly. So I think that's one part. The other part is, obviously, I know government, with the time to run at the moment, is asking for businesses to help where they can. I think the difficulty is, as you were showing in the data, or Sean was showing in the data, that margins are already extremely low. So there isn't a lot of wiggle room or bandwidth to be able to do this. And at the moment, we're being told to hang on in terms of some of the funding coming through. So, people were expecting some fairly sizable contracts, etc. That's not, they're not coming to fruition at the moment as of yet at this point in time. However, one thing I would say is specifically for the defence area, there was a notification that actually this month there would be the launch of what they've called a Defence Office for Small Business Growth. So you mentioned before about South Yorkshire businesses finding it hard to get themselves known and out there. Well, actually, this is one initiative that's starting, as I say, it's meant to be this month, where it encourages small businesses to work with some of the prime suppliers. So instead of having to lead it and having to do all the sort of bureaucracy of winning the bids, that they can support, and obviously from an equality perspective, spreading some of that love throughout the different parts of the UK. So that's something that is improving. But I think that although people from the national good do want to do more, but there's only so much businesses can do with the way things are economically at the moment, trying to survive.
Yeah, absolutely. We can go with that comment, Guy. There's a lots to sort of unpack there, and so I'm just going to kind of hone in on the kind of piece around veterans, if that's okay, because I think one of those kind of happy kind of upsides of this kind of concentrational defence is it does kind of put a bit more of a spotlight on some of that kind of hidden veteran talent that could be helping businesses and actually public sector employees and so many others. I'm going to bring into the Sian on this as well, because we've done some work on this as a chamber network. Just like any thoughts from colleagues and Megan, hopefully you're back with us too, about how we can increase the visibility of that particular bit of the labour market and get some of that talent a bit more plugged into kind of powering SME growth in the region. Sian, can I perhaps come to you first and then to sort of Megan, if that's okay?
I think what we found when we've been doing the deep dive work through the local skills improvement plan is the kind of transferability of military qualifications to civilian applications, and that I kind of mean that in its broadest sense. So if you're a gunner in the military, no, there probably isn't a direct civilian application for that, but there is around project management, leadership, and I think where employers could probably do more is to have a greater level of literacy around those military qualifications, so that they instinctively know, this will directly fit into my business, or I know that you've got these skills and assets. And then probably on the flip side, it's how we're supporting service leavers to be able to communicate some of those and kind of enter the jobs market potentially for the first time. So what we're talking about is a highly skilled community, and it's really kind of a case of adjusting the language and terminology and trying to kind of make those jigsaw puzzle pieces fit, really.
Thanks, Sian. Megan, your sort of thoughts on that, that's okay.
So at Esh, we are actually a Gold Covenant business. So for what we do for both reservists and veterans, so we have a fantastic program, which was kind of developed from our work experience program, specifically for veterans within their transition period to come and spend some time with us in site. We also do kind of like a carousel approach to it, so that they can see all the different divisions and different roles within construction that might be available to them, kind of going and shadowing various different people within different divisions, and it's got a really high retention rate. So quite a lot of the placements that we've had are either working with ourselves now or working within our supply chain. So that's something that we're really proud of. It is something that we are trying to expand on as well. So we're definitely going to be doing some more placements in Yorkshire this time. Obviously, we are a North East based contractor, so the programme did start in the North East, but we're working across the York area, and we're working with York Camp now. So that is something that is a key part of our business. Obviously, I'm not sure what you managed to catch of my previous response, but particularly around social value, working with our supply chain is key, and showing that social value isn't always this additional scary thing. That it's treated like an additional requirement, whereas a lot of the suppliers that we're working with are already doing these things. They just don't realise it as social value. So really, I think for the smaller businesses, it's looking internally before you start anything new and out there, and trying to engage with the wider community, is understanding what you already do as a business and how you can improve on that, and particularly the military side of things. That has proven a great success for us. So by all means, if anyone wants to discuss that after the call even, more than welcome to answer any questions on that.
Perfect. Thanks, Megan. Sean, I saw your hand going there. You want to come back in again? And then what we'll do after that is like throw this open to the floor. So please, colleagues, have hands and questions ready. And Laura, you've already made the fateful mistake of putting a comment in the chat box, which means if no one puts their hands up, I am going to pick on you in a second. But Sean, back to you. You were going to come in for a moment.
Yeah, and I'd just echo anyone who's got any thoughts or reflections, feel free to stick them in the chat. I kind of building on, not slightly away from social value, but I think, for those smaller companies that make up the vast majority of our business stock, public sector procurement just feels like something that they are not able to penetrate. They are not big organizations with separate procurement teams or social value teams. They might not even be able to host a work experience program or whatever. What could perhaps public sector partners do more of to encourage those businesses, or maybe even some of the bigger businesses, like S Group? How can they build that confidence? Because these are time poor, tiny businesses that are up against it. The idea of kind of wading into public sector procurement, or there is a massive opportunity, kind of doesn't feel like it's going to be worth it, and that they're ever going to kind of make any traction in it. Do you see what I mean?
Absolutely. What we might do, I think, let's sort of have that kind of concluding question of what would be our sort of magic wand in this space to kind of get some of those opportunities more accessible. Let's just be kind of thinking on that this next few minutes, and we'll perhaps try and conclude with thoughts about how we make inroads in that space. Any sort of questions or comments from the virtual floor? Don't be shy, colleagues. Okay, well, we might have to go with that kind of big ending question now then, Megan and Guy. So if there was that sort of magic one that sort of tackled some of the issues that Sean has just kind of rehearsed in terms of that, space feeling a bit inaccessible, what would you do to open the door to sort of more SMEs and micro businesses? Guy, perhaps coming to you first.
There's a couple of things that I would do. So first of all, I think it needs to be there needs to be greater enforcement from public sector customers to enforce primes to use more SMEs instead of maybe people who they have sat on the bench who aren't maybe SMEs in that specific area. So that's one part. I think if there could be some business benefit for the companies who do provide advice on tendering, etc., maybe some tax breaks or something to help the smaller SMEs, or make it, maybe there's a certain amount of credit that's available to SMEs to be able to get some help, putting a bid together or building up, like templates that they can go from, that kind of stuff. I think that would be a start, or have some kind of, workshop around what are the different options that people can think of. That they're the kind of things I would start off with.
Thanks, Guy. And I completely agree on the kind of tax breaks. I'm sort of a big sort of fan of those kind of incentives being hardwired into the system. Laura, I can see you've kindly put your hand up. I can't imagine what encouraged you to do so. I'll let Megan come in with her thoughts on the procurement question, and I'll bring you in, Laura.
Yeah, I think just basically on what Guy's just said there. So with the expert business advice that is featured within the national TOMs, so NT15 is expert business advice, and bidding is included in there. So if a business like ourselves was to support an SME in the area, that does go towards social value, and obviously that is kind of incentivized because we do have social value targets. So there is that tie there, albeit it isn't financial. It is more around the social value. Now, because of the procurement change, a lot of social value now is drawn with liquidated damages. So there would be a fee if you weren't to deliver it. So again, that is where the finance comes into that incentive. So yeah, I think with procurement, particularly in the space that I'm in the last 4 years, it's changed drastically, particularly around my area. So completely understand the need for the support for SMEs. I think we're in a unique position really because we have been in this space for so long now that we understand the changes and we can see those coming. We're part of the right groups to understand that the changes are happening years in advance to be able to adapt what we do. When it comes to bidding in general, we do work with a lot of subcontractors that struggle with kind of resource really. Because if your project manager is also writing your bid, is out on site, or you haven't got time to do it. So we do see that struggle, and that's where we have I'd say, proportionate team that work on supply chain engagement, and we do the events and we ensure that we're bringing everyone along on the journey. I think there's just been a comment there about what I've just said.
Yeah, sorry,
so
Megan. Just in case people didn't know what it was.
Yes,
Naturally,
so
I'm
Tom is
incredibly familiar with every detail, but just for everyone else's benefit.
Oh, the irony.
So
we put on a private
on.
sector-led webinar to kind of brief our public sector colleagues, and we end up being the ones who use all the acronyms. We'll never live it down, colleagues.
Yeah, so it's something that there are Toms within those measures that realistically we don't do a lot of. I'll be honest, because we deliver about 40 of them generally on majority of schemes, whereas there are probably untapped potential in a lot of the themes that maybe we don't see that the SMEs will benefit from.
I think we've just lost Megan again, then just at the tail end of that sentence. So, Laura, great to see you. Can I just bring you in, please, if that's okay?
Yeah, it was just a couple of things. So first of all, just about sort of how SMEs can get involved with some of the social value. So Sheffield City Council, as working with our Business Sheffield team, has made a massive increase in the amount of local smaller suppliers that we are commissioning as a result of our procurement recently. It's been like a specific effort. I don't have the percentages on me, but it is a massive change, and it's by making sure that our contracts that are below a certain threshold are shared with a list of local SMEs. And there's also been an initiative to support them with some of that procurement stuff that Guy's just suggested around, like supporting how to fill them in and how it's not as awful as it may at first seem, in partnership with our diverse business board. So it's something that, if private sector organisations in the local area, particularly around Sheffield, but there's benefit in sort of widening this out to South Yorkshire as well, I think, can get in touch with us, and I can direct them to the support that is available. I would say as well, obviously taking an apprentice is a big investment and not something that necessarily all small businesses have got the capacity to do, but there are much smaller things that we need for our local population in terms of all sorts of things, like providing an interview, an hour to mock interview our participants who are seeking work and things like that. So it doesn't have to be a huge investment to tick some of those boxes, as Megan said. So yeah, that support is available, and I think, ambitiously, I would like to see a regional consistent approach to social value. We've learned ways in which we can integrate these in, so that they are contractual things, but we very much do facilitate people delivering against that social value as well, and that's our role, to make that easy for businesses to be able to do that. So yeah, I don't know if that's something that there is appetite for and we could work on.
It sounds like a great idea, Laura, and certainly sort of a line of inquiry coming out of this discussion. I think the other thing that sort of struck me about your comments is that sort of how this needs to be a blend of the strategic and the tactical in this space. Just that kind of really simple thing of like kind of finding out a local suppliers list and proactively reaching out to them, can make a world of difference. Here in Doncaster, we have a sort of a new collaborative event of our local authority partners called Your City, Your Say, and like there's various reasons why that event exists, but one of the things we do is just have like a sort of a marketplace thing there where local authority teams and services are there every single time and visible, and so like procurement, business rates, planning, and they can just go and interact where business goes anyway on their own terms, and like those kind of human interpersonal relationships are just a huge part of this jigsaw too. But like there's no rocket science involved in any of these things, is there? It's just like rolling out some common sense stuff that helps. Right. Gonna just see if there's any more kind of questions or comments from the floor. Holly, you very kindly signposted people to where they can kind of find a few more opportunities in Doncaster. That's much appreciated. Lou, great to see you. Can I bring you in?
Hi there. Yeah, it was just to build on Laura's point. So Business Sheffield, I've just seen in the comments about, and like what you said about the tactical and the strategic. So what they did really well was they hosted a workshop where there was like 120 businesses, and the head of procurement for Sheffield City Council was there. So that workshop literally went through how to get on that list. They've created a directory that you can list your company on. And so anything that's under the tender threshold, which I think Fag Packet was about 30k, the local authority will go to that list and go out for 3 quotes. So it's worth sharing that list with everyone so everyone can be on that list. And then the build on that was the next event. So we were involved in the Diverse Business Advisory Board, but we worked with Business Sheffield, and we had the other anchor institutions as well. Because when you think about the percentage of the size of their budgets, that if we can get more of that budget spent in patch. So we had the local authority, the universities, college, teaching hospitals, and the head of procurement for each of those organisations there in the room. And again, they went through how to do it on a panel, and they stayed so people could go and talk directly to them. And these stats aren't quite right, Laura, but I think it was roughly a couple of years ago, it was about 19% went to local SMEs. And now I know it's over 50. It was up nearer the 60 mark. So it has made, really tangible impact in the amount of spend that's happening in patch. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that.
No, it's super helpful, Lou. So sort of, Guy, with those kind of comments from Lou in mind, what kind of Holly's put in the chat, what Laura's just spoken to, what do you think is the kind of the ability of South Yorkshire to get hold of organisations like the Ministry of Defence and others in that space, might be some of the other like big defence contractors as well, and like get them to our region and be as accessible as some of our sort of like local authority partners are currently being? Is that a winnable thing that we could and should be majoring on as South Yorkshire?
I think that depending on the opportunity, I think that it's always worth going ahead to show the capabilities that we do have, even if we don't necessarily win it. Which I know from a business perspective, you are putting a certain amount of time and investment in that for the cost of sale, but actually showing the skills that we have and that they should be looking closer, even if we don't win it, that there should be something there. Otherwise, it is going via the prime. So I must say, probably defence is probably a bit different procurement maybe than some of the other local government things. But yeah, no, I think it sounds like there's quite a lot going on, and actually it's really nice to hear, and I'll be definitely trying to get on this list for Sheffield and Doncaster. So that's really great to hear. And just in terms of the social value bit, one of the things that I have been doing locally is free of charge. I've been running a coffee morning for anybody who's interested, no experience in cyber, but to come along, have a chat about it, but including veterans, and I give them a free review of their CV to see where their skills can lie, and then other local businesses are coming that can speak to them as well at the same time to potentially look at, see if they want to take those on. Yeah, I'll move on to the next person.
No, but that's great, though, guys. It's just like another like little like throwaway example of like the social value that I think is absolutely inherent in our SMEs. It's just like kindness, doing the right thing, or trying to give like someone a leg up, and like, you know, it manifests itself in a million and one kind of different ways in our sort of ecosystem, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Colleagues, we'll be drawing to close in 10 minutes. So final call for any questions or comments from the floor. So please do put your hand up, interrupt, or stick something in the chat box. All three of those are absolutely fine. Okay, nothing else that's kind of forthcoming. So Megan, I'll perhaps just kind of bring you in on this one. You know, if you were to sort of horizon scan, you know, like 5 years down the line, you know, where do you see things perhaps going in the sort of social value space, and what are the things, even your own organization, that you're not doing now that you'd perhaps like to see yourselves doing on that kind of time horizon?
Yeah, so I think the Gold Covenant was the start of that, particularly around those hard to reach. So we've just started a program with ex-care leavers. So trying to work with the minorities in the areas that we're working in. So I think there's a particular focus around, when I first came in social value, it was all about NEAT, whereas now it's a bit more directed. So really trying to dive in. A lot of the work that you have to do is internal, and the understanding from your internal teams that social value is just a way of working, and it's part of our business values, for them to accept how things do need to change. And actually, you know, just because we've been doing it for 20 years, it doesn't necessarily. So trying to diversify on what we're doing and fin on key areas. Now, the blanket approach to social value is great because it means that there's a standardized delivery and everyone's receiving the same amount of support. However, trying to create little pockets of so the idea from businesses are given a key theme, and it's their sole focus to focus on that area of work for the length of their contract. Maybe that's where we need to be putting a lot more of our energy, you know, trying to contact companies where they don't have the capacity, like we said, for work experience, whereas some other businesses that might be, you know, the key driver, but they're having to deliver on expert business advice, but they don't really have the teams to do that. So, you know, trying to focus on where businesses have certain expertise and making sure that we can maximize the volume of that for each business, rather than trying to target everyone with the same brush. I think that's what I'm trying to get to, and I think that's where things are possibly going. A lot of our clients are either long-term.
Okay, I think we've lost Megan again, but I think it's like, you know, really important points there on that kind of personalization of that approach that I think we can all kind of take away. Conscious of time, colleagues. So and not least, I know, Sean, you'll be now champing at the bit to have another hour's conversation about care leave. It's kind of highly synergistic with kind of the work we're just starting to kick off with sort of South Yorkshire's Deputy Mayor Kelvinda. We'll perhaps leave that for the next time round. Lou, can I just kind of bring you in for some kind of final thoughts? Because obviously you're kind of, you know, co-chair along with Tarek Shah of COPAR's Business Advisory Board. You know, we try where we can to sort of dock in the quarterly economic survey with the work and the considerations of that advisory group. You know, where can some of this information take us to? What might we do next as a region to kind of bring some of these opportunities in the defence sector to life, do you think?
Yeah, I think what in terms of, I think Tarek was on the call actually. I don't know if he's still here. But yeah, I think there's a huge opportunity, isn't there, for us in this region? We are literally world leading when it comes to the defence sector. I was fortunate enough yesterday to be at SMP when they signed their sort of historic deal for this significant amount of investment. And Andy was sharing with me that when he went to China recently, he was absolutely blown away. He went to a control centre that was like the size of the arena. But he was saying, while they will always outstrip us on mass supply, they will never be able to on specialist precision high end. And we have that in this region, and that is, you know, a USP for us. So I think we've got to take hold of this opportunity and make sure that that spreads out through all the supply chains. I think with particular regard to social value, and as you said, the Business Advisory Board is a place where we're asked to give perspective and a deeper dive into different topics. And in our last conversation about supply chain, social value was so front and center that we said, you know, we really need to have a deeper dive into this. So our next hot topic for the QES is specifically around social value and businesses' appetite to social value. Dan, you and I were asked to go to a roundtable with Sir Charlie Mayfield about Get Britain Working. We've got Pathways to Work, you know, which was been championed out of Barnsley and is spreading across the region. We've got the Opening Doors Inclusive Recruitment Campaign, which, as Megan and Guy were talking about, is about how you open up your employment to protected characteristics, whether that's veterans or NEETs or people with additional needs. There's a lot of asks of business at the moment, and I think you made that point, Dan, that, you know, businesses have had a hard few years, 5 years or more. And whilst we want to make sure that we can harness business as a force for good, we need to do that in a meaningful and manageable way for business. And when is the ask too much? So the next set of questions, we've got the opportunity to kind of dive into that and understand where can businesses lean in. And a stat that I'm always struck by, and somebody alluded to it earlier about being able to just go to your local school or give an employment talk, is that we have a really high NEET rate in this region. And if our young people have 4 or more employer engagements by the time they leave school or college, they're 86% less likely to be a NEET. And I think that's not a huge amount of commitment for people, actually, for the business community, to ensure that our young people have that level of employer engagement. So I think you've got the dates on there for the field work. So we'll see those questions come out early February and run till early March. And then we'll have the opportunity to discuss those findings at the BAB, at the Business Advisory Board, and then back for the webinar here on the 23rd of April. So just encouraging everybody, obviously, to complete the QES and share it with their networks as well, and make sure that it isn't just for, I know the chambers pull this together, but it is for a really wide audience, and we want that perspective from everyone in the business community, not just chamber members. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Lou. Brings us to a close really nicely. So just leaves it with me to say thanks to Lou, to Sian, to Guy, to Megan for being our speakers today. Thank you everyone for making the time to engage with this. We really do hope you find the insight and the data useful. And thanks to Simca as always for kind of sponsoring this. As a Chamber Network, we try and be as helpful as we possibly can do to our strategic partners, and there is an absolutely wide open door and offer to say, if there are lines of inquiry you want to know about from the business community, if there's insight you want to be generated, whether it's through this piece of work or other synergistic work schemes, like, the answer is always going to be yes, we want to help. So like, do use us as a route to market for you guys, and please do tell your friends, your colleagues about these webinars. It's great to see everyone who's here on this call, but it staggers me a tiny bit, given like the challenges laid out by Sian around the kind of the economy and stuff. We've not got a bigger kind of audience for this at the moment. You know, there is a responsibility, I think, to kind of engage with us and think deeply about the challenges our business community is facing. So if you can encourage colleagues to attend the next one, which is on the 23rd of April, it'd be much appreciated. If not, we'll be hitting their inboxes with this recording and we'll get to them somehow. So on that note, thank you all ever so much for joining us, for making this a great session. And we will see you on the 23rd of April. Take care, everyone. See you later.